Hi all my dear students, I am your facilitator Amit Ajmani and I welcome you all to Sri Jayendra Rank Zone classes. Now students, in this class we'll be starting up a new chapter, that is magnetic effects of current. Before doing the magnetic effects of current, let us see what exactly a magnet is. An object which shows the property of attracting small pieces of iron towards it and resting in north-south direction when it is suspended freely. Such an object is called a magnet, and this property of magnet is called magnetism. A magnet is an object which attracts the magnetic substances like the pieces of iron, steel, nickel and cobalt. Fine. So magnet has two properties. One, that it attracts the iron pieces towards it, and when it is suspended freely, it will rest in north-south direction. Fine. Now the substances which have magnetism and are found naturally, they are called the natural magnets, whereas the materials which are made magnets artificially by various methods, they are called artificial magnets. An example of a natural magnet is a piece of lodestone, which is Fe3O4, right? Now when we talk about the most common form of magnet, that is a bar magnet. A bar magnet is a long rectangular bar of uniform cross section which behaves as a magnet and attracts pieces of iron, steel, nickel and cobalt. We know the basic things about magnet, that a magnet has two poles near its ends. One is the north pole, another is the south pole. Fine. Now what are north pole and south pole? We already know it, that the end of a freely suspended magnet or a freely pivoted magnet which points towards the north direction is called the north pole of the magnet, and the end of a freely suspended magnet or a freely pivoted magnet which points towards the south direction, that is called the south pole of the magnet. One basic property of magnet is like magnetic poles repel each other, whereas unlike magnetic poles attract each other. Fine. Now when we talk about a magnetic field, what exactly is meant by a magnetic field? It is the space surrounding a magnet in which the magnetic force is exerted. That space around a magnet is called its magnetic field. Now this magnetic field has both magnitude as well as direction. Clear? When we talk about the direction of magnetic field at a point, it is the direction of the resultant force acting on a hypothetical north pole which is placed at that point. Clear? This is about magnetic field. Now we'll understand about magnetic field lines. What are these? The path traced by a north magnetic pole, free to move under the influence of a magnetic field, is called a magnetic field line. They are also known as magnetic lines of forces, right? In other words, we can also define the magnetic field lines as the lines drawn in a magnetic field along which a north magnetic pole would move. Fine. Now there are certain important things that we need to relate regarding these magnetic field lines. What are these? the magnetic field lines always begin from the north pole of a magnet and end on the south pole of the magnet inside the magnet. However, the direction of magnetic field lines is opposite, that is, from the south pole of the magnet to the north pole of the magnet outside. So we can say that the magnetic field lines are closed curves. Clear? Now, whenever a small compass is moved along a magnetic field line, the compass needle will always set itself along the line tangential to it. Now, what is a compass? We already know a compass is a device used to show magnetic field direction at a point. This compass is also known as plotting compass. Now, what exactly this plotting compass made up of? It consists of a tiny pivoted magnet which is usually in the form of a pointer so that it can turn freely in the horizontal plane. It is enclosed in a non-magnetic metal case having a glass top. Now, the tiny magnet of the compass is also called magnetic needle or just needle, and the tip of compass needle points towards the north direction, whereas its tail points in the south direction. This is exactly what a compass needle looks like. There is a needle have a pointer which is going to point towards the north direction, the tail which is going to point towards the south direction, and this is the pivoted point in between, right? So this is about a compass. Now, if we want to relate the strength of magnetic field, it is indicated by the degree of closeness of field lines. Wherever the magnetic field lines are closest together, the magnetic field will be the strongest at that point. For example, if we try to relate in the case of a bar magnet, then we observe that these magnetic field lines are closest together at the two poles of the bar magnet. Therefore, the magnetic field is strongest at the poles. If we observe these magnetic field lines, we will see that no two magnetic field lines are found to cross each other. Why is it so? Because if any two magnetic field lines crossed each other, it would mean that at the point of intersection, the compass needle would point in two directions at the same time, which of course is not possible. Fine. So related to all these details, we can conclude that there are certain properties, there are certain characteristics of magnetic field lines. What are these? The first characteristic is that the magnetic field lines originate from the north pole of a magnet and end at its south pole outside the magnet, from south pole to north pole inside the magnet, right? Second characteristic is that the magnetic field lines come closer to one another near the poles of a magnet, but they are widely separated at other places. Third property is that the number of magnetic field lines per unit area is the measure of the strength of magnetic field, and the magnetic field is stronger near the poles. Fourth and quite important point, that the magnetic field lines do not intersect, do not cross one another. Why? Because the resultant force on a north pole at any point can be only in one direction. And if two magnetic field lines intersect one another, then the resultant force on a north pole placed at the point of intersection will be along two directions, which is not possible. So we can say that this is a proof by contradiction, that we are proving that magnetic field lines do not intersect each other. Clear? So these are a few properties or attributes or characteristics of magnetic field lines, which are also called magnetic lines of forces. Now let's talk back to the magnetic field. There are uniform and non-uniform two types of magnetic field. If the magnetic field lines are parallel and equidistant, then we say that the magnetic field is uniform. But if they are unequally spaced, the field is non-uniform. Fine. Now from here, please try to relate, because we will be studying the pattern of magnetic field and magnetic field lines in a conductor, right? How magnetic field is produced due to a current carrying conductor. Now when an electric current is passed through a conductor, a magnetic field is set up around it, and this magnetic field is going to exist as long as the current is flowing in the conductor. This phenomena is the magnetic effect of electric current. Clear? Now this magnetic effect of current is also called electromagnetism, which means electricity produces magnetism. Now what kind of magnetic field will be formed if we are taking a straight current carrying conductor or current carrying wire? If it is just a straight line and current is passed through that straight wire, how magnetic field is produced? The magnetic field lines around a straight conductor or a straight wire carrying current are concentric circles whose centers lie on the wire. If a small plotting compass M is placed on the cardboard, it will indicate the direction of the magnetic field. And what we will observing, when current in the wire flows in the upward direction, then the lines of magnetic fields are in the anti-clockwise direction. And if the direction of current in the wire is reversed, that means now the current is flowing in the downward direction in the wire, then the direction of magnetic field lines will also get reversed. Now they will be in clockwise direction. So in this figure we can relate that we have taken a straight current carrying conductor, and on connecting with the battery and allowing the current to pass through it, the magnetic field will be produced, and the magnetic field lines will be in the form of these concentric circles around the wire carrying current, right? If we talk about the magnitude of the magnetic field which is produced by a straight current carrying wire at a given point, the magnitude of magnetic field is directly proportional to the current passing in the wire. More is the amount of current, stronger will be the magnetic field. And it is inversely proportional to the distance of that point from the wire. Means more is the distance from the wire, that case lesser will be the strength of magnetic field. So based on these 2 points we can relate that greater the current in the wire, stronger will be the magnetic field produced, and in case of distance, greater the distance of a point from the current carrying wire, weaker will be the magnetic field produced at that point. Got it? Next, quite important, the force which is acting on a current carrying conductor placed in magnetic field. Let us relate that if a straight conductor of length, let it be L, carrying current, let the amount of current be I, of ampere, is placed in a magnetic field, let us denote it with B, which is perpendicular to the field, then it will be acted upon by a force, and the formula for calculating this force is F is equal to B into I into L, where B is the magnetic field, I is the current, and L is the length. Fine. Now, if the force on a charge, let us say Q, moving in magnetic field in a direction perpendicular to the field with a velocity v needs to be calculated, this is calculated by the formula F is equal to Q into V into B, where Q is the charge, V is the velocity, and B is the magnetic field. Clear? So these are the two formulas for calculating the force on a current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field. Okay. Now we said that whenever current is passed in a straight current carrying conductor, the magnetic field is produced, and the magnetic field lines are in the form of concentric circles. What will be the direction of this magnetic field lines? Magnetic field will be produced. It was first shown by Oersted. And what will be the direction of these magnetic field lines? That was given by Maxwell through his right hand thumb rule. Quite important. Please try to relate. According to Maxwell right hand thumb rule, imagine that you are grasping, you are holding the straight current carrying wire in your right hand in such a way that your thumb points in the direction of current. Then the direction in which your fingers will encircle the wire will give the direction of magnetic field lines around the wire. So applying this Maxwell right hand thumb rule, very important, we concluded that if current in wire is vertically upward, then the magnetic field lines are anti-clockwise. While if the current in wire is vertically downward, the magnetic field lines are clockwise. Clear? Now this Maxwell's right hand thumb rule is also known as Maxwell's corkscrew rule. What is corkscrew? It is a device for pulling corks from the bottles, and it consists of a spiral metal rod and a handle. Now if we try to relate Maxwell's corkscrew rule, according to this rule, imagine driving a corkscrew in the direction of current. Then the direction in which we turn its handle is the direction of magnetic field or the magnetic field lines. So this is Maxwell's right hand thumb rule, which is used to find the direction of magnetic field lines around a straight current carrying conductor or a straight current carrying wire. Clear? Now let's talk about the magnetic field pattern due to a circular loop or a circular current carrying conductor. Now, when we talk about the magnitude of magnetic field produced by a current carrying circular wire at its center, then it is directly proportional to the current passing through the circular loop, and it is inversely proportional to the radius of circular loop or the circular wire. And the magnetic field is given by the formula mu 0 I upon 2R, where I is the current, R is the radius of the circular loop, and mu 0 is the permeability of material used to make magnets. Fine. Now, when we are talking about a circular wire, then there is a clock face rule. According to this clock face rule, look at one face of a circular wire or the coil through which a current is passing. Now, if the current around the face of circular wire flows in the clockwise direction, then the face of the circular wire will be south pole. And if the current around the face of circular coil flows in the anti-clockwise direction, then the face of the circular wire will be a north pole, right? So in this circular wire, figure number 1, we see that the current is going in the clockwise direction. This is the direction of current. So if we are looking at this wire from the front, then we will find the south pole here. This is the south magnetic pole. And if it is opposite, if the wire is circular and the current in the wire is going in the anti-clockwise direction, then the face at which we are looking will be the north magnetic pole. Clear? One simple rule is just relate south pole, north pole starting with alphabet S and N, and just write the alphabet S or N without stopping at the end. For example, this is the S, don't stop and continue going, put an arrow, so you will be able to relate that south pole will be on the face when the direction of current is clockwise. If I want to make north pole, I will write N like this, don't stop, just stretch it a bit, put an arrow at the end, you will be able to relate that it is anti-clockwise. So this is a simple way to remember as to what will be the polarity. Clear? So this is our clock face rule. Now comes quite important, that is a solenoid. The magnetic field due to a solenoid. This is quite important. Please focus. Now what exactly is a solenoid? The solenoid is a long coil containing a large number of closed turns of insulated copper wire. Now when an electric current is passed through the solenoid, it produces a magnetic field around it, which is similar to the magnetic field produced by a bar magnet, right? Just like the magnetic field produced by a bar magnet, the same type of magnetic field will be produced. This is a solenoid in which we have these large number of turns, and when current is passed, then we will find that the magnetic field lines inside the solenoid are in the form of parallel straight lines that we can relate here in between, which represent a uniform magnetic field. That is, the strength of magnetic field is the same at all the points inside the solenoid, which is very important point. Secondly, it behaves as a bar magnet and it has north pole and south pole, and the magnetic field lines will be going from north to south outside the coil and from south to north inside the coil, just as in the case of a bar magnet, right? So two things we noted down in solenoid. First thing is that when current is passed, magnetic field is produced, which is exactly the same as that of a bar magnet. How? Two reasons. Number one, north pole and south pole. These two will be formed. Number two reason is that the magnetic field lines are going from north to south pole outside the magnet and from south to north pole inside the magnet or the coil. The next important thing to remember is that the magnetic field lines inside the coil of a solenoid are always parallel to each other, and because they are parallel to each other, which means there is a uniform magnetic field inside the coil of a solenoid. Got it? This is quite an important topic you need to relate. Now, how strong will be the magnetic field produced by a current carrying solenoid depends on these three factors. What are these? Let us try to relate one by one. The first factor is the number of turns in the solenoid. Larger the number of turns in the solenoid, greater will be the magnetism produced in it. Second is the strength of current in the solenoid. Larger the amount of current passed through solenoid, stronger will be the magnetic field. That means the magnetic field is directly proportional to the number of turns and is directly proportional to the amount of current passed through it. Right? Now, when we just make a core material inside a solenoid like soft iron rod, then in that case it is going to produce the strongest magnetism, right? So these are the various factors on which the strength of magnetic field produced by a current carrying solenoid depend. To calculate the magnetic induction B at the center of solenoid, we use this formula. B is equal to mu 0 Ni upon L. This is L. Here N is the number of turns of length L. So L is the length, N is the number of turns, and I is the current. Mu 0 we have already seen above. It is the permeability of material used to make magnet. Right? So we can see that the magnetic field is directly proportional to number of turns. Magnetic field is directly proportional to the amount of current. Clear? So this is solenoid, which is very, very important. Now, if we just place a core material inside the coil of a solenoid, then an electromagnet will be formed. Now, what are electromagnets? Try to relate. An electromagnet is a magnet consisting of a long coil of insulated copper wire wrapped around a soft iron core that is magnetized only when electric current is passed through the coil. Clear? Now, if we are using the core material to be soft iron, then the solenoid which contains this soft iron core in it acts as a magnet only as long as the current is flowing in the solenoid. The moment we switch off the current in the solenoid, no more magnetism is seen and it will not behave as a magnet now. So all the magnetism of the soft iron core disappears as soon as the current in the coil is switched off. That is why this is called temporary magnets, right? For making an electromagnet or a temporary magnet, the important thing is which type of core material we are using. The core material that we are using must be of soft iron. Why? Because soft iron loses all of its magnetism when current in the coil is switched off. But if we replace this soft iron with steel, if we use steel for making the core of the electromagnet, now what will happen is the steel does not lose all its magnetism when the current is stopped, and therefore now it becomes a permanent magnet. So this is the reason why steel is not used for making electromagnets. Got it? Now talking about the factors affecting the strength of an electromagnet. There are various factors. Let us see one by one. The first factor is the number of turns in the coil. The strength of electromagnet is directly proportional to the number of turns, which means that if we increase the number of turns in the coil, the strength of electromagnet will also increase. The second factor is the amount of current flowing in the coil. Again, the strength of magnetic field of an electromagnet is directly proportional to the amount of current. If the current in the coil is increased, the strength of the electromagnet will also increase. The third factor is the length of air gap between its poles. If we reduce the length of air gap between the poles of an electromagnet, then its strength will increase. So we can say that the strength of the magnetic field of an electromagnet is inversely proportional to the length of the air gaps. Fine. Now we have seen two types of magnets. One is a bar magnet, which is called a permanent magnet, and an electromagnet. Let us see what are the differences between a bar magnet and an electromagnet. The bar magnet is a permanent magnet, whereas an electromagnet is a temporary magnet. Why? Because its magnetism is only for the duration of the current passing through it. The moment current is stopped, the magnetism is lost. Second point of difference between a bar magnet and an electromagnet is that a bar magnet or a permanent magnet produces a weak force of attraction comparatively, whereas an electromagnet can produce very strong magnetic force. Third difference between them is that the strength of a permanent magnet cannot be changed, but the strength of an electromagnet can be changed. How? By so many things, like by changing the number of turns in its coil. If we can if we want to increase or decrease, we can just change the number of turns, because magnetic field is directly proportional to various factors like amount of current and like the number of turns, right? So we can change the number of turns or we can change the current passing through it. Clear? The next point of difference between these two is that the north-south polarity of a permanent magnet is fixed and it cannot be changed. But we can change the polarity of the electromagnet. How? Simply by changing the direction of current in its coil. So if we will change the direction of the current, then the polarity will also get changed. So these were a few differences between the bar magnet and electromagnet. Now these electromagnets are used in electric bell, telephones, electric motors, etc. And the permanent magnets, which are usually made up of alloys such as carbon steel or chromium steel or cobalt steel or tungsten steel and alnico. These are what permanent magnets are made up of. These are taken as the core material. You need to relate that Nipper mag is an alloy of iron, nickel, aluminium and titanium, while alnico is an alloy of aluminium, nickel, cobalt and iron. These alloys, Nipper mag and alnico, are many times stronger than those made up of ordinary steel. So they are used for making strong magnets, and such type of strong magnets are normally used in microphones or the loudspeakers or in ammeters or in voltmeters and in speedometers. Right? So this is all about our electromagnets and permanent magnets. Let us now talk about the force on current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field. A current carrying wire or a current carrying conductor exerts a mechanical force on a magnet, and if the magnet is free to move, then this force can produce a motion in the magnet. If we take the reverse of this statement, that is also true, means that if a magnet exerts a mechanical force on a current carrying wire, and if the wire is free to move, this force can produce motion in the wire. This concept is used in motors. We'll see later on. Now the magnetic force on a current carrying conductor depends on the strength of the conductor and length of the conductor. It also depends on the strength of the magnetic field, and it also depends on the sign of angle between direction of current in conductor and of the magnetic field. Now how does it depend? Let us try to understand one by one. The magnetic force on a current carrying conductor is directly proportional to the strength of current. That is, force F is directly proportional to current I. If we increase the amount of current, the amount of force will also increase. This force is directly proportional to the length of the conductor. F is directly proportional to L. If we increase the length of the conductor, the force is also going to increase. Next is the force is directly proportional to the strength of the magnetic field. A strong magnetic field, if it is strong magnetic field, more force will be exerted. And it is directly proportional to the sign of angle between direction of current in conductor and of the magnetic field. That is F. Force is directly proportional to sine theta. So to conclude all these 4 points, we relate that the force, the magnetic force on a current carrying conductor can be calculated by the formula F is equal to B into I into L into sine theta, where B is the magnetic field, I is the current, L is the length, and sine of theta, theta is the angle between the direction of current in conductor and of the magnetic field. Fine. Now we have seen that a force is acting on a current carrying conductor. Now this force is going to produce motion in the conductor. What will be the direction of this motion? What will be the direction of this force? This is calculated by using Fleming's left hand rule for the direction of force. Now, according to Fleming's left hand rule, hold the forefinger, the center finger, and the thumb of the left hand at right angles to one another. Now we need to adjust the hand in such a way that the forefinger points in the direction of magnetic field and the center finger points in the direction of current. Then the direction in which the thumb points gives the direction of force acting on the conductor or the direction of motion of the conductor. So let us try to understand it with this figure that we have to take the forefinger, the middle finger and the thumb perpendicular to each other, right? So when they are placed perpendicular to each other, then we will relate that the forefinger points towards the direction of magnetic field. If the middle finger is pointing towards the direction of current, then the thumb will give us the direction of motion. This is Fleming's left hand rule. Clear? And on this principle, as I told you earlier, that electric motor works. Now, what is an electric motor? An electric motor is a device which converts electrical energy into mechanical energy. A normal common electric motor works on direct current. That is why it is called DC motor, that is direct current motor. And this electric motor works on the principle of magnetic effect of current. It is a very important component in lot of our household electrical appliances like electric fans, in refrigerators, in mixers, in washing machines, in our coolers, all the places. Fine. Let us relate the principle of a motor. As studied earlier, the electric motor utilizes the magnetic effect of current. How? A motor works on the principle that when a rectangular coil is placed in a magnetic field and current is passed through it, a force acts on the coil which rotates it continuously. Now when the coil rotates, the shaft attached to it also rotates, and in this way the electrical energy which was supplied to the motor is converted into mechanical energy of rotation. This is the principle of an electric motor. Now let us try to understand what is magnetic flux. The total number of magnetic field lines passing through a given area normally, that is called magnetic flux. Now this magnetic flux is calculated by the formula magnetic field into normal area. So magnetic flux is the product of magnetic field and normal area. Fine. Now let's talk about electromagnetic induction. Whenever there is a change in magnetic flux linked with a coil or circuit, an EMF is induced in the coil. This phenomena is called the electromagnetic induction, and the EMF produced in the coil is called the induced EMF, right? We know already about this instrument, galvanometer. Let us try to relate a bit detail about it. A galvanometer is an instrument that can detect the presence of a current in a circuit. It consists of a pointer which remains at the zero position, which is at the center of the scale, when there is zero current flowing through it. Now this needle, this pointer can deflect either to the left or to the right of the zero mark, depending on the direction of current. Okay, let's talk about Faraday's laws. Whenever there is a change in magnetic flux linked with a conductor, an EMF is induced, and the magnitude of the EMF which is induced is directly proportional to the rate of change of magnetic flux by the conductor. These are the observations as per Faraday's law. Another thing you need to relate is that the direction of current induced in a closed circuit is always such as to oppose the cause that produces it. This is called Lenz's law, and this Lenz's law is based on conservation of energy. Clear? Now let us talk about the Fleming's right hand rule, which is used to find out the direction of induced current. According to this Fleming's right hand rule, this rule states that hold the thumb, the forefinger, and the center finger of your right hand at right angles to one another. Adjust your hand in such a way that forefinger points in the direction of magnetic field and thumb points in the direction of motion of the conductor. Then the direction in which the center finger points gives the direction of induced current in the conductor. This Fleming's right hand rule is also known as dynamo rule, because this is applied in the dynamos or the generators. We'll just see after 2 minutes. So this is what Fleming's right hand rule says, that hold the forefinger, middle finger and the thumb perpendicular to each other. Then place the forefinger in such a way that it points towards the direction of magnetic field. Relate your thumb in the direction of force or motion. Then the middle finger is going to give us the direction of induced current. Fine. Now this current is of further two types. One is direct current, which is called DC, and one is alternating current, which is called AC. These are very important. Let us try to relate what these actually are. Let us see first the direct current. If the current flows in one direction only, it is called a direct current. And this direct current, as we have already told, that in short form it is written as DC, whether it is capital or small. Some of the sources of direct current are dry cell or the dry cell battery, or the car battery and DC generator. Quite importantly, direct current is graphically represented on a current time graph by a straight line which is parallel to the time axis. So if I am going to draw a graph between the current and the time, it will be a straight line parallel to the time axis. Clear? Now, what is alternating current? If the current reverses the direction after equal intervals of time, it is called alternating current. This alternating current is a current which flows first in one direction in a circuit. This is called the positive direction. Then in the reverse or the negative direction at a regular interval of time. This alternating current is written as AC in capital or in small having a dot. Otherwise it would have been air conditioner, right? Some of the sources which produce alternating current are powerhouse generators or the car alternators or the bicycle dynamos. And when we plot a graph, it is always the current shown is a zigzag line. It is either like this or better it is shown like this. This is alternating current. Normally, alternating current is shown like this because it is positive and negative directions which are represented graphically. Now, very important, there are a few differences between alternating and direct current. Two we have already seen and observed. First difference was direct current is only in one direction, whereas alternating current in two directions, alternatively changing the direction. Direct current, graphically it is a straight line, whereas alternating current graphically it is closed wave motion. And when it comes to transmission of current, we use alternating current. This is important, that an important advantage of alternating current over direct current is that alternating current can be transmitted over long distances without much loss of electrical energy. So that is why for long transmissions alternating current is used, because energy loss is less, which actually what we really want. In our household supplies, it is the alternating current that is coming, which is changing its direction alternatively, and the frequency of the AC supply in our country India is 50 Hertz. We know the SI unit of frequency is Hertz. That means it is 50 cycles per second. Correct? Now let us talk about electric generator or the dynamo. What is an electric generator? The electric generator is a machine for producing electric current or electricity. This electric generator is a device which converts mechanical energy into electrical energy. And a small generator is called a dynamo. What is the principle on which an electric generator works? Let us try to understand. The electric generator works on the principle that when a straight carrying conductor is moved in a magnetic field, then current is induced in the conductor, right? Now, in this electric generator, a rectangular coil which is having straight sides is made to rotate rapidly in the magnetic field between the poles of a horseshoe type magnet. So when this coil keeps on rotating, what happens is it cuts the magnetic field lines, and because of which a current is produced in the coil. Now, depending upon what type of current is being produced or what is the direction of the current, these generators are of two types. One is the generators which produce AC, alternating current. So they are called alternating current generators or the AC generators, and the other ones are which produce direct current. That is why they are called direct current generators or DC generators. Let us try to get into a brief of it. AC generator means alternating current generator. That is, this is going to produce an alternating current, means the current which reverses its direction continuously after equal intervals of time. Very important point is that in the case of AC generator, we use slip rings, due to which the direction of current keeps on changing alternatively. This AC generator works on the principle of electromagnetic induction, and it is also known as an alternator. Let's go through a bit details of DC generator also. DC generator is a device which produces direct current, or we can say such a current whose direction remains the same. And very importantly, in case of DC dynamo, the slip rings which were used in the AC generator, they are replaced. Slip rings are not used, they are replaced by a commutator, which is a kind of split ring. And because of this commutator, the current which is produced is the direct current, which flows only in one direction. So these are our AC generators and DC generators. Clear? Now there are certain points which needed to be remembered by you. Please make sure that you relate, you understand, and you retain, you learn, you remember these points. Number one is neon tester is used to indicate the presence of electricity, whether it is AC or DC, in a circuit. So neon tester we need to remember. Second thing is switch. What exactly is a switch? It is a device used to on and off an electric circuit or appliance, means to start or to stop. That is done through a switch. Quite common. We use it every day in our houses, so we already know it. Next, fuse. This fuse we have studied in great length in the chapter electricity, the last part, heating effects of current. So just to have a brush up, what is a fuse? It is a small piece of wire made of a material of high resistance and low melting point. Fine. Now, the maximum amount of safe current which can pass through an electric fuse is I is directly proportional to D 3 by 2. Here I is the amount of current and D is the diameter of the wire. Right? So by this relation we can calculate how much amount of current can be passed through a wire having how much diameter. Now, to avoid the risk of fatal electric shock, we know that the metal body of electrical appliances is earthed. There are certain electrical appliances which have metallic bodies. So, if there is any loose connectivity or because of any reason the current is leaked, then in that case this current will pass through the whole appliance because it is made up of metal, and we know that metals are good conductors of electricity. So the moment we are going to touch that appliance, we will experience an electric shock. Obviously, that is harmful. So in order to prevent such a dangerous situation, these electrical appliances are urged. How? You already must have studied that there are three types of wires. One is live wire, in which the actual current is flowing. Another is neutral wire, through which the current is not flowing, but it is used to complete the circuit. And the next one is the earth wire. This earth wire, this basically is attached to the metallic body of the appliance, and in case there is any leakage of current, then in that case whole of that current which has leaked and which was present in the body of the appliance, it goes through this earth wire into the ground. So we can say that earth wire is basically a safety measure to prevent us from electric shocks. Fine. Now further talking about fuse, the fuse is the lightning and fan circuit of a small house. The fuse which is used for these things is of 5 ampere rating, which means that the fuse will melt if the current exceeds 5 ampere value. Right? Now there are certain power appliances like geysers, like microwaves, like air conditioners. They require more amount of current. So for that purpose, the fuse which is used in these circuits are of the value 15 ampere. Why? Because we need more current. So there are fuses of variable values depending upon the amount of current required. We use that kind of fuse. Clear? Next, the electric bell and electric fan. They are the applications based on magnetic effects of current. Another thing we have already studied that a magnet, when it is suspended, it basically remains and it rests in north-south direction. But when a current carrying coil is suspended freely in Earth's magnetic field, its plane stays in east-west direction. Fine. So these are a few points that we needed to remember, and this is all about our chapter magnetic effects of electric current. Quite an important chapter, lot many important things that we need to relate. So I hope that whatever we have studied, you have been able to relate and understand everything. And quite importantly, you will be practicing and learning all these details, because in the next class, as always, we will be taking up the question answers which are related to this chapter, magnetic effects of electric current. There are certain rules that you need to remember. We have studied about the Maxwell's right hand thumb rule, which is also called the corkscrew rule. We need to remember that Maxwell's right hand thumb rule or corkscrew rule is used to find the direction of magnetic field lines. Right? Next we studied about Fleming's left hand rule and Fleming's right hand rule. In both cases, we need to hold the forefinger, the middle finger and the thumb of our left hand and right hand respectively in such a way that they are at right angles. They are perpendicular to each other. Now, if we want to find the direction of force or the direction of motion, then in that case we will apply the Fleming's left hand rule. I repeat, Fleming's left hand rule is used to find the direction of motion or the direction of force acting on a body, right? But if we are given the direction of motion and we are given the direction of magnetic field, then in that case, in order to find the direction of the induced current, we use the Fleming's right hand rule. Got it? So these are Fleming's left hand rules and right hand rules. Another rule that we studied was clock face rule, which was actually to find out that the face at which we are looking, what polarity is present there, whether it will be North Pole or it will be South Pole. Got it? So I hope that everything is crystal clear now. So meet you in the next class. Please make sure that you have learnt all these, because this is quite an important chapter and there are so many independent topics in this which are very important. Fine. So time to end the meeting for today's class. We'll catch you up in the next class discussing the questions and answers of magnetic effects of electric current. Till then, practice well, study hard, take care of your health. Fine, and have a great time, guys. Thank you so much for being with me in the class. Goodbye, everyone.